Hello everybody. It is time to talk about another thing. It is beautiful. Yes. I've actually had this lined up for a little bit of time, but then the TriMet map came in, and then I focused on that. Of course, as you can tell, Oregon's always been a bit of a mess. Let me tell you. We're gonna read this, I think, is what we're gonna do first together, and then I'm gonna do what I normally want to do first, so let's do that. I'm more saying this to myself, including so when in editing I can look at myself in the face and say, fuck you. Fuck you, but no, so, Portland, Oregon. Oh, you love hearing that these days, don't you, on the internet? 3 of Oregon's largest hospital systems are suing the state over its alleged lack of adequate mental health care, which they say has forced the hospital systems to house patients in need of mental health treatments for months, which is very true. Providence, Legacy, and Peace, which I don't think I've ever heard of Peace. Actually, I think I know Peace Health from Southern Oregon. I think Jackson, Josephine County have Peace Health down there, I believe. The lawsuit, the Oregon Health Authority, who is in control of my state healthcare, has forced them to provide care they're not equipped to give to patients who should be civilly committed to psychiatric institutions such as the Oregon State Hospital. The State Psychiatric Hospital's ongoing capacity crisis, along with a recent court ruling that strictly limits who can be admitted, has left community hospitals with nowhere to send patients in need of mental health treatment. Hospital, I almost said hotel representatives. Hospital representatives say they have been forced to treat those patients long term. OHA and Oregon State Hospital have remained focused on the care of the hospital's patients and supporting them on the road to recovery as they search for a new path forward with no aid. I added that last part myself, but it's essential. Don't worry, we'll get to that. The hospital systems want the health authority to start admitting civilly committed patients again at the Oregon State Hospital, although a federal, good old Biden, court order issued last month says they can't. Good old Bitey boy. Trying to stem a capacity crisis of the hospital, a judge ruled in August that the hospital must become a eunuch. Red August, shut up. Must only admit patients accused of a crime, but unable to find aid, or found unable to aid in their own defense, or those found guilty except for insanity. Civilly committed patients, are those who have been deemed a danger to themselves or others, and whom a judge has ordered for involuntary treatment at the hospital. Those patients are often initially committed to an acute care hospital for short-term medical treatment only. The hospital systems say OHA's failure to provide adequate facilities for civilly committed patients is a violation of their civil rights. Obviously, they're speaking of the civil rights of the mentally ill, not themselves. Which would be kind of weird. Well, it's not predictable that they decided to launch a lawsuit. It is predictable everything they're complaining about. I have a lot of personal experience with this stuff in regards to mental health stuff in the state, but also I am a born and raised native Oregonian, so naturally that means that I also have a lot of experience with this. Even more so when it comes down to where pretty much all the mentally ill are, and all the homeless are, and all the drugged up are, which a lot of times is a combination, unfortunately, in the Portland metro area. That said, I live in the Portland area because, you know, the thing is, there's basically 2.4 million people living in the Portland area alone, not counting the Vancouver portion of the Portland-Vancouver metro area, which is, what, like 60 to 65% of the entire state's population. So pretty much everybody's going to be here, obviously. Trouble is, when they say, search for a new path forward, whereas they have nowhere to send patients in need of mental health treatment. Those two go well together, including with the lack of equipment to be able to be equipped to help them, because of the fact that these are normal hospitals. Yes, they have psychiatric wards. I've actually been to one for a week when I was a kid. Check 2001 off your bingo list if you're guessing the years. If you got it wrong, take a drink of your chocolate milk, or whatever the fuck it is you drink. Sophisticated individuals only drink chocolate milk. They're medical hospitals. They're not psychiatric hospitals, so as a result they only really are made and equipped to help people who are not off their rockers and having issues and have instability. They're there for people who actually have non-mental medical issues, obviously. So almost all their capacity is going to be for that, and all their training is going to be for that. It's not going to be for psychiatric. So the psych wards that each of the hospitals have, I think all of them have one. I actually could be totally wrong about that, because I got sent all the way out to Banfield, Providence, Banfield. So I could be completely wrong about that. It might actually be very, very rare, far few between which hospitals have which wards in normal medical hospitals for psychiatric evaluation. It's not even for actually being kept in as a mentally ill person and getting their care. It's literally for eval. So to evaluate the person and see how bad off they are. Then they got to dump them back on the street if they're, again, homeless. Or they got to dump them back to wherever the hell they came from, where maybe it's making the situation worse if they live somewhere or with somebody. And then on top of that, if they have an actual stable situation at home, well, then they do that instead. They go back there. But the point is, nothing actually helps. Nothing actually changes, really. And it's really sad. So there's already an immense lack of ability to care for these people. So they really are just ending up on the street. The different correctional systems, whether it's county or municipalities, or even state, they've been complaining about this for well over a decade, because the fact that it's became such a big problem, it's became a scary amount of the populace and across the state and the major populated areas. And what ends up happening is they get dumped on the street. Then they might do something stupid, like some sort of a crime or something where basically they don't really have a choice. They know they can't send them to the hospital because the hospital will reject them. So what do? They put them in jail. And then they just dump them back on the street again after like 24 hours. Just like they do with the people who are drugged up. Because that leads me to my next point. Oregon is statistically, and has been for at least a decade straight, it has statistically been rock bottom in the entire country at all 50 states. Rock frickin' bottom in terms of accessibility to mental health care and aid. Mental health care and aid in general. And also one of the highest, so the very top 3 consistently over the last decade in mentally ill people. That's a great combo to have. It's even more so true when you have a homeless crisis across the state, not just in the Portland area, and then on top of that, you have a massive drug crisis. Guess what? Oregon also, for, again, at least that I know of the last decade straight, has ranked rock bottom in the entire country at all 50 states in accessibility to addiction aid and help, so recovery services, and that kind of healthcare. Rock bottom into accessibility and also availability, as in there's basically none that exist anywhere in the state in the first place. And then, again, just like the mental illness aspect, just like the mental illness aspect of the state, I can't get that right. I'm like tripping over my syllables when I say those words together. There's like something about how they go together. It's like my brain's like, this doesn't work with your tongue, sorry. Just like the mental illness aspect of the state, the state has also always been top 3 in the last decade straight out of all 50 states in regards to the amount of people that are addicted to drugs. And if you go with all addictions, it remains in the top 3 because Oregon has some of the highest addictions to a lot of different things, especially if it's not substances, because so either drugs or different drug of choice is called alcohol. It's going to be stupid shit like gambling. Because believe it or not, Oregon also, this is like the perfect fucking combo, isn't it? The mental illness aspects, the drug aspects, so addiction aspects, and then the aspect of addictions to gambling. There's a lot of addictive personality types in Oregon, apparently. You have the lottery aspect. The aspect of the lottery that people don't consider, this is a little bit of a side tangent, but it's still semi-related, for the reasons I just stated, is actually second most lottery machines, either that is the most lottery machines in the entire nation, even though you have Nevada, which is nothing but a freaking gambling state, and then New Jersey. New Jersey. You have New Jersey, you have Nevada, and then you have Oregon. And Oregon is always like fighting for the top spot in those 2 categories. And there's infinite accessibility to lottery services and gambling in the entire state services. So that's a little bit of a side point and tangent, but again, I feel like it's very applicable to mention, given, again, the context I gave to, and sort of a rough preface to that. So yeah, Oregon is a dire straits place when it comes down to being mentally ill, being addicted, and these kinds of things. And if you think you're going to get the care that you need, you're not. Because this brings me to another point. People love to point out, this is sort of, I guess, semi-attached to the whole people love to pull things into politics. Fortunately, technically is partially political, as much as I wouldn't want to claim it is. The state of Oregon, and especially the city of Portland, right? What's one of their big reputations, including the political sphere? It's the fact that they're, of course, naturally, always trying to supposedly make it welcoming to homeless people. Although then again, if that was the case, they wouldn't be doing what literally every other place in pretty much the entire Western world does, and tries to push them out of sight and tell them you can't exist because you're inconvenient, because you might smell, because you might look bad, and because we hate looking at you, we hate looking at your camps, we hate looking at this or that. We don't like to acknowledge that we have a problem, and that is that the problem, technically by our own creation, is that we have a lot of you guys called homeless people. We can't have that. You have to be out of sight, out of mind. So you can't exist. Can't exist means constantly telling them you can't be here, you can't be here, you can't be here, you can't be here, move, 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 move. By force. All the time. Non-stop. It's an inevitability if you're homeless. It doesn't help when you're like that. So if we're really so biased, including politically, everybody's so damn biased and so welcoming to homeless people, and that's why we have so many homeless, is because, you know, it's so homeless friendly. If that was the case, why is that the theme? Because obviously it's the opposite. Politically, most people hate homeless. Even the people who claim to want to aid homeless people hate seeing them around. And in fact, also, usually or hypocritically, actually feel kind of threatened, especially if they're by themselves, certain times of day, or certain places, go figure. The thing is, not only is that aspect not true, but there's another cliche, which is that, you know, like, oh, well, what about CCC? What about Lukedorf? What about all of these different groups, right? Old Town Clinic. What about all these different groups and places, ran by different groups and places, that are not only advocacy groups, but specifically they are literal, like, health and services groups for the mentally ill. Obviously, there's a lot of funding, and there must be good accessibility to that healthcare and that aid, right? Wrong! Because CCC, Central City Concern, and Old Town Clinic, they're both actually a fucking fantastic example, because Old Town / Chinatown in downtown Portland, Burnside Broadway area, that is the, and always has been, the mentally ill capital of Portland. It's more recently, in the last like decade, became kind of like the homeless / drug addict alley of Portland. It just is. It's unfortunately the, I guess you could call it a cesspool of Portland. I mean, they literally had a stabbing at 11:30 in the morning yesterday, so the 1st of October, that killed somebody right there in Old Town off of Cooch. You know, it's getting bad, but, you know, Helen Swindell's is there. Helen Swindell's was an old hotel, I believe, before it officially became housing for the halfway, for the transient, or not transient, but for the previously homeless, for the people who are barely above homeless, and for people who are recovering from drugs, basically, or things like that, right? Recovering from something. But the majority of them are mentally ill. Very, very mentally ill. That's the main people that live there, is mentally ill people. And yes, a fair portion of them definitely do drugs off and on, and are addicted to drugs. So that's a perfect combination. A lot of them have either had homelessness in their past, go in and out of homelessness for various reasons. So in the same, not in the same building, but in the exact same block, just down Burnside, on the other corner, behind it, there is Old Town Clinic and CCC. They're in the same building. CCC, again, Central City Concern. These places are touted as like the places that are specifically CCC are touted as the place for all the mentally ill to be able to go, and that they've always been so great and so helpful, which is totally bullshit. They've been corrupt for a fucking hell of a long time. Extremely corrupt. Especially CCC. But even Old Town Clinic's been very corrupt. And they both, in fact, that I know of, I've heard all of them have very biased individuals. Meaning that these individuals who are supposed to have no bias because they're supposed to actually give a fuck about these mentally ill people and these unstable people and these people that have addictive tendencies and personalities, right? All these different issues. They will actually grow and gain a bias against very specific individuals that go to the clinic. And so they'll intentionally withhold medications, or they'll invent a problem, or they'll cause a problem so that they can't access their medications, or whatever it is. Like, they'll do all sorts of different things. They'll just treat them like general shit and yell at them back because they decided they had a vendetta against these specific people, but not these ones that go there. Because they just decided, I don't like you in particular. Welcome to Old Town Clinic / especially Central City Concern. It's terrible. Luchtdorf apparently is up and down, but basically, even when they're up, they do have some employees that do that, and they are still somewhat corrupted. Don't know how bad they are now, because again, they're the roller coaster. They're up and down all the time. But for the most part, all these different mental health care facility services and groups are very corrupt, and they have a lot of biased people. And some of these, in fact, a lot of people, it's actually common, if you actually get to know and talk to a lot of these people at Helen Swindell's or other people who have mental illnesses who might live elsewhere but have to go to these different places, if you talk to them, and you talk to a lot of them, you will find out that a majority, not even half, like a actual legit majority of them, have at least at one point or another, off and on, experienced bias and also experienced where they just never were given their medications that they were supposed to and have to have in order to be stable and sane and hold their housing, a job maybe, whatever else it might be. That's the reality of it. You think that it's so easy, it's so great, it's so accessible, like, what are you talking about? The statistics have to be manipulated or wrong or something, right? Wrong. No, it's actually shit. My brother Nathan, who rests his soul if he really is dead, because again, really fucking confusing shit, and nothing adds up, and seems like that itself, and the police and everything, was extremely corrupted. Here's a little fun fact. The management company of Helen Swindell's bailed out of their contract and abandoned the fucking building and tried to pawn it off on some other management company after my brother's death. We know for a fact it's because of that and everything surrounding it with the investigations. We know that for a fact. They even told us directly, personally, to my mom. That's why they did that. But they were forced by the state, I believe, to have to come back and serve at least the rest of their contract and their obligation to manage Helen Swindell's. For at least the rest of their duration of their contract, however long that is. That's how fucked up that whole situation with my brother is. That's why I still half say he's dead, but half kind of believe something else is going on, and he's not. Just saying. Anyway, thought that bared mentioning since I keep mentioning Helen Swindell's and that whole area and the mentally ill people, because my brother was very mentally ill, which it was a perfect leap pad into this. My brother, the last few years he was around and or alive, whichever one it is, he didn't even have, I think it was like a year and a half straight, he didn't have all of his pills, ever, at once. He needed so many pills because he was very fucking mentally ill. Like, extremely mentally ill. It's actually really sad how mentally ill he was. Like, he had many different mental illnesses. But the main one that was really bad was his schizoaffective disorder. I've touched on this before because I mentioned it. There's East Coast versus West Coast philosophy or teaching in mental health care. East Coast will teach you that schizoaffective disorder is not what the West Coast says. Well, my brother Nathan, my mom, me, everybody in this side of the family has never had any psychiatrist or psychologist, therapist, anybody ever tell us anything than the West Coast philosophy, which is that schizoaffective disorder is schizophrenia with bipolar. So, yeah, and he had horrific schizophrenia. imagine not getting the pills that you absolutely need in order to even properly function without having a meltdown or having a psychotic break or whatever else. And also living around all these other super unstable and irritable people. Oh, yeah. And especially when you have a very addictive personality like he does. Whichever one. Then, yeah, no, that's a recipe for disaster in every possible way. But yeah, for a year and a half, he didn't have access to, like, the vast majority of the medications that he literally required in order to have some semblance of stability in a life under him, a foundation under him. He didn't have it. In fact, the last 6 months or so, he didn't have anything but, like, occasionally, I think, like, 1 or 2 of his meds. And he had a lot of different meds he had to take. 1 or 2 of them. Because he went to Old Town Clinic inside a CCC and had to deal with both of them all the time. There's a certain employee that had aggressive bias against him, so they treated him like a dick, and I just about bet they intentionally sabotaged a lot of that whenever it was like, oh, we have a computer glitch. Can't seem to find your prescription. Oh well, come back next time, you gotta have another appointment, and try this again. And it kept happening. Guarantee that employee had something to do with that. Nevertheless, even when that employee wasn't active, somehow still never really got the medications he needed. Yeah. It's pretty fucked up. And then because of that, you hear about an infinite amount of other people in Portland proper alone that are very mentally ill, that know they need their meds, they want their meds, that's why they're going to get them, and refilled and everything else. Can't get them. Can't get them. Because that's how corrupt and fucked up all these mental health advocacy or groups and all the mental health aid groups are in Portland and across the state. Because it's not just a Portland issue, it's a statewide problem. And it's horrific. So you want to talk about lack of accessibility? Oh, you might have access to healthcare or to mental health services. But is it really a genuine, true access if you can't actually get the shit you need? You can't get your medications you desperately need, and you have to have in order to even function and have some semblance of stability in your life? Like, can you even consider that true accessibility? Because to me, it's a fuck no. Not even close to truly accessible. Oh, you can go into a building that's called that. That holds that group that does that, or 2 groups that do it, like in this case. Okay. And you can't defend a point to try to say that it counts as accessibility just because you access the building that they have it in and maybe access their services, which they don't really even give you. Like, this is how fucked up it is that if I had to do it, I could say, at least they get, it makes me kind of sick to my stomach, at least they get their mental health care in the sense of they get their psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? Right? At least they get that. So technically, yes, you're wrong, Danny. That is accessibility. They can access it. That's enough. That should be enough. Like, if you're one of those people, well, first off, fuck you. Second off, fuck off. Because you're very fucked up. And you need some probably mental help yourself. Because holy shit are you wrong. Holy shit do you not give a fuck for somebody. Like, it's really fucking sad. It proves you don't give a damn about some people, which is really, really fucked up. And I'm saying that as admittedly, a misanthrope. It's pretty fucked up to be that way. It's very callous, but the world's full of those assholes, right? But to me, it's a fuck no. That's not accessibility. It's a royal problem. I will admit that mental institutions, psychiatric hospitals, insane asylums, they themselves are usually auto-corrupt. Extremely corrupt. Extremely royally fucked up. Like, you go there, and you're basically a fucking prisoner. That's what you are. You're literally, by definition, a inmate at the institution. You're even given numbers, actually. Or if it's not the numbers, it's the fucking, first initial last name. On your fucking, uniform. Which is usually, kind of like either pajamas or a jumpsuit. And it's like, You know how fucked up that is? If you want to fuck somebody who's already mentally unstable up more, put them in a fucking asylum. Seriously. That's how you break somebody mentally. Even the most stable, sane person, you put them into a genuine, classical asylum, they will shatter beyond repair in no time flat. That's a fucking guarantee. They are messed up places. Just the atmosphere is wrong. Everything's so fucking blank, white, sterile. Like a prison, except instead of being dark and gray, it's white and... well, white. That's what it is. It's just fucking... heaven. How it's depicted. Yikes. There does need to be genuine, like, medical hospital type of thing. Like, that kind of operations in hospitals. But they actually genuinely want to fucking cure these people, or at the very least, help them be consistently stable and self-aware enough to realize maybe when they're starting to get erratic, unstable, or go off the cliff, or get triggered, or whatever it is. They need that. So at least that kind of a hospital. We need more of those. In downtown Portland, right up on the edge of, like, Northwest Industrial District, the Pearl, and Old Town. Right on the crux of those three is a Legacy Good Samaritan. That one is where, like, almost all of the mentally ill people go to. In fact, they encourage each other to go there because they don't give a fuck how dirty you are, how smelly you are, how anything. They don't give a fuck about how unstable you are, how dangerous you are, how whatever. They're going to treat you like they treat everybody else, with the highest level of dignity and the highest level of compassion and the highest level of understanding, the highest level of everything. And they really do mean to help you. And so they get such a massive amount of those people because it's about the only place they can go where they actually get the fucking help they need and the medications they need, because they can give them at least a holdover. Temporary medications, they're usually dissolvable ones, in my experience. They'll give you these small packs of... usually it's like for a week. The meds that you need that you haven't got because CCC/Old Town and Luchtdorf and everything else is fucked up and corrupt and royal and biased, and they just keep never giving you your meds that you desperately need to be stable. So they'll give you those things. They always do. They're very good about that. So that's why it's the mentally ill hospital, because that's where all of them go. It's still a medical hospital though. So the fact that Legacy's involved in this doesn't surprise me, though, because they, if anything, firsthand could tell you how bad the situation is and how these people need a fucking actual dedicated hospital that's dedicated specially to them, as in psychiatric care. We don't really have any of those because we shut all of them down because they're really old, and there's only one left, and it's the state hospital, but again, it's limited beds. And plus, I believe they're remodeling and or, like, rebuilding a part of it or something like that the last like few years because of the fact that it's really fucking old. So it's needed a lot of repairs, it's needed a lot of remodeling, it's needed a lot of restructuring, and even probably rebuilding. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're still actively doing that, because you probably also have to go really slow, especially considering you still have to operate through it all. That's gotta suck. But yeah, so they're already limited more than normal, but then of course they're one single hospital for the entire state. Yeah. And I do believe they're the only hospital in the entire state for the mentally ill, the psychiatric hospital. So, whew, it's got to be fun to be mentally ill in Oregon, doesn't it? It's bad, man. And it sucks. So, this whole article does not surprise me. And I wanted to talk about it because it is truly a terribly bad situation that the state's been in. But it's been in this exact spot for way too fucking long. On top of this, by the way, Oregon has always been in the top 3. This is another thing that sucks. Oregon's always been in the top 3 in the amount of suicides committed per year. Always top 3 to 5 in the entire country at all 50 states. Oregon's always been right there. Even after we got super dry and super sunny and super hot, when we're supposed to average 42.5 inches of rain a year. And instead we've been averaging, at best, 20 inches. Less than fucking half, which literally, by definition, when you get to, I believe it's 12.5 and under, it's arid. It says in you're a desert. That's how bad we're getting. You know, even despite how bright and light it's gotten, because people always thought, well, it's got to be because of the weather, right? Wrong. It's proven the last 14 years. No, it's not the weather. It's literally just, for whatever reason, Oregon's a shit place to live, I guess, when it comes down to not getting depressed for some reason. And literally suicidally depressed. It's really bad. And so that's something that bodes mentioning too, because it's an aspect of mental health as well. Also probably proving, again, there's not enough outreach either. And ease of accessibility for these people to know maybe there is some places they can reach out to locally in the States to help them, that out of desperation, maybe it might help them get out of the darkest fucking place they've ever been in their life and help them not be as suicidal anymore, you know, or at least walk them through it so that they give themselves a better chance at seeing the world and their life differently and seeing a little more value in themselves and pulling themselves back up again. Obviously, we're not doing anything there either, if there even does exist for the state. I know the national hotline does. I don't know if the state even has one themselves. It's bad, man. I could mention a long list of things that actually Oregon statistically is always the tops in that are all negatives and have been for longer than been alive, some of them, but I'm not going to, because that's going to get even further off topic and I've talked enough today. So yeah, this is just an important topic and I figured I might as well touch on it. And since, again, I am local, you might as well get, you know, I have this experience with the mental health systems and stuff like this via my brother, a lot of his friends and people he's lived with. My mom has thus direct and indirect experience with it as well, and them and these people, so on and so forth. And then I have personal experience with just the general mental health world itself in terms of even being in a psych ward when I was a kid. So like, and I still remember all that very vividly. It's actually kind of a scar of mine, is the fucked up world of psychiatric care and stereotypical psychiatrists and psychologists. Ugh. That'll also break a person. I'll tell you what, that'll scar you, that'll hold them back too and piss you off. Different story. You want to learn about that, listen to Robin Williams talk about it, including indirectly via movies that he co-wrote and made, which was like Patch Adams is one of them. I can't remember the other one that was akin to the same kind of story as Patch Adams. That shit makes me fucking ball my eyes up and get super sick to my stomach because I know everything that's said in that. I know every feeling that you feel in that, and personally I've gone through it with the system and how psychiatry works and stuff. I fucking hate it. It made me feel a lot worse, not better. And it made me get worse, not better, by the way. So that's fun. But yeah, anyway, important topic, figured I'd touch on it, and more cannon fodder and fuel to feed the infernos, people trying to crucify Oregon as this whole liberal hellhole. Have fun, have a field day, my children. Okay. If you excuse me, I have to be counseled on Reddit now. Good day.